This one has these, right?
Okay, the recorder's on, so.
All right. It's not happening.
So it takes a while for it to get going, so.
We're going to call the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Wednesday, August 12th to order. Roll call.
Mike Scanlon,
Justin Emery.
Tracy Gurno.
Sean Cup,
Sylvia Henry.
Wendy Manson.
Daniel Elder. Lloyd Johnson.
We will now all,
Grant Thompson.
we'll all stand for Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag.
United States of America. To the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will now entertain a motion for approval of the agenda for the Wednesday, August 12th, 2020 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for the Wednesday, August 12th meeting.
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. I will now entertain a motion for approval of the minutes from the July 8th, 2020 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
Let me,
go ahead.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll
for
second.
July. Who said it? The second?
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the minutes from the July 8th, 2020 Planning and Zoning Commission. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll now go on to the public hearing continuation for the consider a planned unit development amendment to Forest Creek R Homes. I'm going to turn it over.
Don't we have to close the meeting?
Wendy, because it's a continuation, do we need to close or do we just?
Are you opening up the hearing, or did they have it open for the hearing?
It's a was it posted as a public hearing?
It was published as a public hearing.
Okay, so we will close the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting at 7:02 and open the public hearing at 7:03.
Madam Chair, my name is Steve Griffin. I reintroduced myself to you all. I was here a few years ago.
Get a little closer to the speaker.
I'm sorry, is it not big enough?
Is it on?
I'll speak a little.
Maybe tilt that up a little bit, I can't hear you there.
Okay. My name is Steve Griffin. I'm with NAC, and I occasionally get out to Montrose to meet you all, but my son, Ryan, moved on to kind of a different career path, so he abandoned me. And so I'm here and also to introduce Daniel Elder of our firm to kind of help some transition, and I'd like to just make a few comments on the agenda item that's before you and your continued public hearing. I know, just looking at the minutes, there was some concern about precedent. I noticed primarily in the meeting minutes. And under planned unit development, I thought it would be important to kind of emphasize the idea that you deal with planned unit developments individually as a package. So the actions that you take there are not transferable to other types of projects, whether they're PUDs or just general straight zoning, because you're making specific findings about a specific project if you proceed to approve it. Specific findings on that project that justify the departure from your codes that the applicants are asking for, or in some modifications.
Is that in the state statute?
That's actually probably case law. The statute doesn't really address PUD very much directly, except for the fact that it accommodates planned unit development, so it's really a case law finding. The precedent issues come, and I have to admit also to be an attorney, so precedent issues come up when you've got specific facts that are transferable to another situation and you act in a certain way based on those facts. Then in those other situations, you can be bound in some ways, but in PUDs it's very rare because you're making specific findings for a particular project related to the situation, that the lay of the land, the architecture perhaps, the nature of the development plan that's before you, that are unique almost always from any other PUD. So your decisions don't necessarily translate into legal precedent. So you have a lot of flexibility in considering the package that's before you. So I know that was one of the large discussion items at your previous meeting, and beyond that, I know that it was one of the reasons that you tabled, but if there's other reasons or other questions you have, I'd be happy to.
So, if, let's just say, for instance, somebody came along, bought an older home in Montrose, wanted to tear it down and build a new one. And they came and they wanted to change the setbacks, they want variance, right?
Right.
So what's the difference between this and that?
Well,
It's just, I mean, the way I look at it simply, it's basically the same thing.
well, there's different, for variance, there are statutory requirements for you to find. And
I get that.
based on practical difficulty and whether there are unique
Problems,
circumstances.
yeah.
So those don't apply for PUD, the practical difficulty findings or the reasonable use findings that are part of a variance or the statutory requirements for variance that are also in your code, not just in statute. So you need to make specific findings about a variance request as to why those unique factors apply in that particular case. For PUD, you're not held to that finding standard. You're making a broader finding that the land use generally is more consistent or as consistent with your planning goals as a standard plat or standard zoning request might be. So you don't have to make those findings of practical difficulties or uniqueness for a PUD. You're deciding that if you go forward, you're deciding that project is consistent with your goals, not necessarily your specific zoning standards. In effect, you kind of write a new zoning ordinance for each PUD. That's one way to think about it.
Sounds like that.
Can be.
So I guess the question,
The ordinance in hand.
I think the question that we had last time was, does this set precedence for another development that would come into Montrose? Stating that if we keep approving changes to the type of homes that are built, does it set precedence for another PUD from another company to be able to do the same thing?
It would not. You would, in another PUD, they would need to make their own case for why their particular project, even if it had the same kind of standards applied, why their particular project was worthy of your consideration for your land use goals.
All things being equal, if it was, you'd have to give it to them. How could you not?
Well, true. That's true in a very narrow sense, but the fact is that in the real estate industry, like to say, there's no piece of property that's the same as any other piece of property because of its location or its configuration or its soil conditions or
We're just
whatever it
talking
may be.
setbacks here.
Right.
That's all we're talking about. We're not talking about any of those other issues.
And that's true.
So that really shouldn't come into consideration, I don't think, in what we're talking about. We're strictly talking about setbacks. And to me, you're also, the ordinance don't allow for it. So why go against the ordinance? We set up ordinances for a reason. And that, I also said that at the last meeting. I just don't understand why we want to do it.
I do have a question. I wasn't here at the last meeting, and so can you just tell me again what role you're in?
Yeah, I apologize. I wasn't here at the last meeting.
Okay.
My name is Steve Griffin. I'm with the planning firm NAC, actually one of the principals. So I'm here to help kind of transition from your prior representative from our firm, Ryan Griffin.
And they represented, represent the
city.
whole the
They're
city.
They're city planners.
Got it, okay. Oh, okay, I didn't realize you still got it.
Yeah.
Got it, okay. I'm stepping behind. Okay, now I got it, yeah, okay.
And Commissioner Scanlon, I'm not arguing for or against this particular project, but just, I guess I'm trying to assure you that you've got a lot of flexibility in how you approach the project.
Right.
So, and if you think the ordinance is a better standard than the PUD proposal, certainly that's a valid view. Sure.
Do we have a picture of because my question is, I actually live in that neighborhood, neighborhood, and I'll be honest, those two-story things they built are really hard to look at. And,
What they're gonna build is in the pack. What they're proposing to build is in the pack.
see that?
It's like this.
It's more of a ranch style, right?
Yeah,
So it
exactly.
looks like more like a brick.
Yeah, that's the side of it, or that's the front.
So it's more of a ranch.
So it's
This
raised along with.
That's what we want to do.
Right,
Yes.
That's what I want to do. That's what I have to, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I understand your point, but just from living in that neighborhood, the ranch style ones are way more pleasing to the eye, and I can understand why the consumers like them better. Sure. But I mean, if we could let them do it and not have it be a precedent, that's kind of what we're asking, right?
Yeah, that's part of it, and the other part of it is why are we deviating from the ordinance in the first place?
Well, I mean, I did read that that's what it's more popular with the buyers.
Right.
And I can tell you, having driven by those two-story ones,
Very nice.
the ranch are much nicer.
Right,
The
right.
two-story they look cheap, I mean, it looks like, I mean, just little. But anyway, that would be my 2 cents.
I got a question too. What really is the city planner's duties really?
And our duty here traditionally is to look at your code and look at your comprehensive plan, your land use goals, and help your planning commission and council understand how projects may or may not comply with those, and let you make sure you understand what the consequences of an approval or denial would be. So to kind of be the technical experts for it.
But don't you think you're now like the setbacks are out of whack and the size of the lots are out of whack? Wouldn't you have told the builder that that's probably not feasible? To protect the city and the residents?
Any builder or property owner has the right to come before your board and ask for departures from your code. Now, you're obviously not obligated to approve those departures. So our role becomes, how do we make sure that you understand what the choices that you have before you? So like I said, technical experts, we don't make the decisions, but we want to make sure that you have the information available to you to make a good decision that you're comfortable with in the end.
Like you and Ryan, sound like you're promoting for the builder when you should be neutral, really.
Well,
No, I think what he's just giving us the information, both sides of the story, like what we have and what they want, and how can we meet in the middle. I don't think he's picking sides.
Why do we have ordinance?
We have
I
ordinance.
mean, the ordinance is 10,000 square feet per unit per house.
Sometimes things have to change though, sometimes, depending on what's in the market.
If you want to cater to them.
Okay. Does anybody else
But
have
I
any,
think that everybody should follow the ordinance and the rules.
does anybody have any further questions for Mr. Gritman in regards to this matter? Hearing no further questions, we will close the public hearing at 7:12 and reopen the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any? Oh, we do. Okay, sorry.
I'm with the applicant, so
Okay.
at some point, I'd like to.
Okay, so then we'll just keep the public hearing open. I didn't know that.
Okay.
You can step forward. That's okay. We'll keep the public hearing open and you can chat with us.
Okay. Hi, Jay Rose, and I'm with the builder for this project. I was not a previous planning commission, so different person was, so apologize in terms of not completely understanding what was discussed in detail, but I read the minutes, and so just some things that I wanted to clarify, and forgive me if it was clarified before, but I think it's worth saying again, because one of the big issues that, is the setbacks. And just want to clarify, originally, these were platted as 2 lots together because they were twin homes. And then there is a smaller lot, smaller than a standard R1 single-family lot, but 2 lots next to each other because they were twin homes. And then there's common space behind, in front, and in between. So the setbacks that are proposed now those units are broke apart, but those lots are still together. And so the setbacks, previously a twin home, you have a 0 setback on one side,
Yeah,
a
sure.
setback on the other. So now we're breaking those units apart. Well, they were already in 2006, that plan broke them apart. So they're broken apart, and the setbacks, there's still the common, we'll call it a common property line here, because they're is 7.5 feet to that property line, so those two units are 15 feet apart. And then the 5 foot that's referenced is on the outside. So it's 5 feet, and this unit over here is 5 feet from its property line, but in between there's common space. And that varies, the minimum is 5 feet, so between these two units, there's 15 feet as well. 5, 10, 15. And that's the minimum. There's some situations where it's wider than that because those lots are wider. So I just wanted to clarify that really we don't have one unit 10 foot from the wall of the other unit. It's a minimum of 15 and sometimes wider. So that's the one thing I wanted to clarify. And I know sometimes, sometimes the change, when we're before a commission, it's like, oh my gosh, here they are, or what the change is again, why a change, but I guess changes aren't always a bad thing, and as a builder, you try to keep up with the trends and make changes, we're not putting hardest gold appliances in anymore, and used to, it would be that you do a townhome project, and every townhome had the exact same color of siding and looked all the same. Now, we mix it up, and you can see that in our other projects, other projects. In Forest Creek, the other homes we built, if those are all different siding colors, each unit has shakes, a combination of 2 different types of sidings in different colors, and colors vary from one to the other. That's a personal taste, but that's kind of a change at the market. So change isn't always bad, so apologize, you could say it's 4 years since the last change, so we're just, we're doing our job and trying to give kind of people what they want and respond to the demand, so, that's kind of the change thing, and then, precedence, it kind of boils down to that setback issue, and so minimum of 15 feet between houses. So that's 7.5 per, if you're gonna split it up evenly. Well, a lot of single-family developments throughout, and a lot of communities have a 7.5 foot minimum setback or something in that range. So it's certainly not unusual for a single-family zoning district of, even much bigger houses to have a minimum 7.5 foot setback. So I'm glad does that help? Hopefully if that kind of clarifies, I don't know if there was confusion there, but any other questions, I'm glad to help.
Yeah, no.
We're planning on different siding, whether our different colors, whether that's just kind of the way things are going now. So we won't have units next to each other that are the same colors. We have enough siding selection that we've got 10 units there, and the number of units hasn't changed. It's still 10. But they'll all, you won't have the same next to each other. Even if we stay with the same gray, because we have 2 different colors of gray and 2 different styles of siding, a shade, and so we can have another gray building over here, but flip it, and now, it's mainly dark gray with a little bit of light gray, and over here we have light gray with a little bit of dark gray, so, there's variety. Before, the units that we had approved in there were the units like we built around the cul-de-sac, where they were narrower, but they were basically the garage, and the door was on the side. It was on the side, you walked to the side. So, you lose a little bit of street appeal because you don't have any windows on the front. True, those had a bigger, more distance in between them, between the building, between wall and wall, but also that side entry door, you have a sidewalk going to that door. So the perceived distance between those buildings is a little less. You know, you have more impervious coverage because of that long sidewalk. You know, you can kind of look at different advantages. They were taller units, these are Ramblers shorter. So, you know, the other units, yeah, I wanted to point out, yeah, they were farther apart on the one side, but the side entries each have a side entry and a sidewalk to that, you kind of lose a little bit. These all have the deck patio doors on the back side. You know, some of the twin buildings across the street on the south side, you know, the ones that are the connected twins, you know, those have those will have more space in between than what we're proposing, but they also have the patio doors on the side. So then you add a deck to each of those units, and all of a sudden, that perceived distance between living spaces is smaller. You know, so.
Yeah, but that also allows for more green space, which is attractive.
And that's why I mentioned that, you know, with the side units, I didn't add up per square foot and see where we at. These units are a little 2 feet shorter than the other ones. Not a lot, but you add that. You have the sidewalk now, the longer sidewalk leading to the side door and that. So, you know, I didn't count it exactly on a per square foot basis, but, you know, I just kind of wanted to point out that, you know, we would be minimum of 15 feet apart, and that's, in terms of, you know, talking precedence, that's a very similar situation that you can run into in a single-family development in a lot of communities,
Does anybody have any questions for Jake?
Well, we got another ordinance that says we have to have, if you have like a boat in front of your garage, and then if you got a camper trailer, that's gotta be on the side on a pad. And then that pad's gotta be 4 to 6 feet away from the next one. If that's 7 or 8 feet, that ain't very much room in there.
You know, it's one of those things, and different cities have different ordinances against.
Well, that's what I mean, I'm just explaining our ordinance.
Those recreational vehicles and, you know, there's some that don't allow the exterior parking of recreational vehicles, or if they can do that, like, I think that's what ordinances are. If a homeowner can meet that requirement and it's not prohibited, but sometimes some things may be prohibited. I'm not sure what the ordinances are of RVs, but, you know,
Well, they
they
have.
aren't required to have an RV, so in terms of trying to accommodate, to have a requirement to accommodate something like that, you know, they're a setback that allows vehicles to be parked in front of the garage space, because your ordinance, I know, does require parking for 2 personal vehicles outside. So with a 2-car garage, they can park, there's 25 feet, that some garages are 25 feet deep, that, you know, there's room to park a vehicle in front of there. So it meets that requirement in terms of the parking requirement for
Yeah, but when they park an RV or whatever, they don't leave it for just a few days. It's probably gonna be there for a couple of weeks before they leave it. That's why I don't think it's a good plan.
Any,
And I mean, a lot of, you get the townhomes, HOAs, they have restrictions against that, you know, so, I guess when we, you know, whether or not that's a goal of the city to allow space for RVs and what size RVs.
They will be part of the HOA, correct?
You know, to be honest, I'm not sure how the HOA addresses that, I'm sorry.
Can you just give me your name?
Is first name J, last name is Gross, R-O-O-S.
With our house.
With the land development division of our home, yeah, we're one company.
Yeah.
Building division, land development division.
Any further questions for Jake?
I actually have a question for the city planner, if that's okay.
Sure.
So let's just say in this circumstance, there's this common area. And we're talking about precedent being set, right? So would the common area, would that make it different legally? Like what these guys are saying is we have two houses right next to each other and now the variance is X instead of Y. But now you have a common ground, common area, wouldn't that be totally different precedent? To say, well, you have to have the common area for that to exist. I mean, would that be,
It's certainly a different situation presumably than something you might encounter. And that would be one of the ways you might distinguish this project.
could you legally write it up that way, or however it's written, could you make it that way, where it was, so that it didn't create the precedent that some of these guys are concerned about?
I think if you were inclined to approve what's being asked, one of the ways of writing it up is to include it in your findings to say that because there's common area between the two private property lines, it increases the setback, or the spacing, let's say. And if you include that as a finding, that's one of the ways that you distinguish it from.
And you could get around someone else and later say, well, you approved this over here.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also just, I know, I'll pen here a little bit, if there's common area here, the HOA, there must be an HOA that owns that common area, so there's gonna have to be some kind of management of that common land, if that's the way the plats plan out, rather than just all private property.
What does the HOA Wendy?
I don't know what the HOA is.
Whoever is the management company.
The management company, I suppose.
Yeah, somebody's got to manage it.
Somebody will have to own it and take care of it.
How about fireproofing
No, I think
the
it's
walls against each other when there's?
usually it's not, it's usually
They
part
didn't want to
of
just build it in
part of that
box.
company.
And there's law.
That would be whatever state statute.
Huh?
That would be whatever building code.
It's within 5 feet.
Then you have to
Because you have a fire there, you know, 3 or 4 will be gone before the fire department, so.
This-
It would be fire code for the separation, right?
So they're gonna have fireproof walls and one against each other.
If they're 5 and 5, they probably will have to limit their openings.
Well, you better tell them that because, you know.
Well, these units are not next to each other, and they're more than 10 feet apart. Okay, the fire code, if you have 5 foot separation from a lot line to a house, you're okay in terms of a fire code. There's 15 feet minimum between all buildings. So there's no different construction requirements in terms of fire code with the separation of that. If the original plan, when they were twin units, then those have fire code requirements, or if they were, certain distance, but when you're that far apart, there's not, the fire code doesn't apply to that.
Any further questions? Does anybody have any questions? Any further comments from the public? Dan, do you have anything?
The only thing you also additionally asked was for an analysis between the reserve development and this one. And you asked about the density of the reserve as it is kind of considered to be developed. It'll probably change in the future, but right now that's about at 3.8 density, whereas this would be about 3.4 density because it's upon 11 acres for the entire plat. So just wanted to ask that.
Okay, hearing no further comments, I will now close the public hearing at 7:29 and reopen the planning and zoning meeting at 7:30. I will now entertain a motion in regards to the amendment to the planned unit development. And they're asking to change, basically, if you don't want to, change the lot configurations. So we need an amendment to the PUD to accommodate the change. So no changes to the plat or lot configuration is being proposed. So we just need a PUD to accommodate the change of the type of homes you're going to put out there.
And setback.
And the setback, sorry.
Yeah, that's what.
Comments from the commission?
I advise not to change it.
Yeah, I have an issue with changing, going against what the ordinance is. I got a real problem with this. I can appreciate what you guys want to do with, you know, building a different kind of house, but the ordinance are there for a reason. I mean, we go through these things all the time, and we've just been going through changing different ones. And we've got this set for certain setbacks, and I don't think we should deviate from it. That's my opinion.
So we will need a motion either way, either to allow this or to not allow this.
I'll make a motion to not allow a change in the PUD.
I'll second it.
Motion has been made and seconded to not allow the PUD for the Forest Creek development. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So the PUD amendment has failed. We will now go on to old business, which we have none. New business coming before us is Sid Chetland with the Cool Java Coffee Shop. Oh. So, new business, Sid Chetland with the Cool Java Coffee Shop parking deferment request.
I am Dale Wright, and I own Cool Spot Java, 150 Nelson Boulevard, Montrose. For 2.5 years, I've been waiting. I've been waiting for the engineers to plan it, the state of Minnesota to approve it. I've been waiting for contractors, painters, electricians, plumbers. Then I waited through the coronavirus for the state of Minnesota to license me. I'm now licensed since June. And I came before the city of Montrose to get my business permit, which I am not allowed, says Wendy Manson. She said, yes, you did.
Or I think that Belcher said that.
Well, you're in charge. Well, whoever's in charge, I was denied the business permit. And I have been through everything for 2.5 years to get this done, putting a business in the city of Montrose. So it fits everything. I'm licensed by the state of Minnesota. And the reason why I'm being denied is because of the parking situation. Now, it was in a former bed and breakfast. It already was a business, this location. It's in a Victorian house right on Highway 12 there. Already had a parking lot which the previous owners had paved. They're denying me the business permit, saying that I don't have 12 parking spaces that are paved and painted. Okay, all these other places in town are allowed to operate without being paved. We have the Untied Garden stand, that's on gravel. Butterfly Gardens was able to set up on gravel. Marketing's is half gravel, half tar. We've got Lino's, Mexican, and the nail place, and 3 businesses sharing 6 little parking spaces. Grace Place don't even have a parking lot, whatever they are. And I'm being denied. It has a parking lot. It already is a commercial property. Sid Chandler, the owner of the property, he went through and he demolished the house on the adjoining property next door and put in the convent base to allow extra parking and a better flow through and all that, and because that part's not paved and painted, they're denying me the business permit. And I feel this has to do everything with the 30-year feud of the Chandler family and the city of Montrose. I feel it has nothing to do with my business or anything about me. And, yes, sir.
Sid, can I ask you a question?
Yep. How confident are you about the July or June 1st, 2022 that you can get it paid by? I mean, I know it's hard to predict into the future with everything that's going on.
Everything is hard and impossible to predict, but, I mean, my brother and I own this property with my brother Scott, and we're good at getting things done way before deadlines almost always. And it's just that we've been bleeding money for 2.5 years trying to get this thing done, and then we got COVID, we got all this different garbage going on. You know, there wouldn't even be, if we hadn't stretched years ago and bought the property next to 150, which was 140, there would be nowhere near enough parking for this deal. And they're still separate lots. So if that was a house there, I mean, back when City of Montrose had these beautiful, grandiose, wonderful ideas about eliminating all the residential homes on Highway 12 and creating everything to be commercial, and that property became, it was vacant for a year because they couldn't sell it because nobody could live in that house.
If I may, when it was a bed and breakfast, how many parking spaces did it require?
Same that's there right
I
now.
think it
That
had
could have
6.
been more, 4 or 5, which.
I can't answer that question, I don't know, because I don't normally do planning and zoning, so I
Okay, yeah, no,
can't answer that.
I think there was about 6 or 7.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it was either. I can't recall. And it's a different parking a little bit later.
So
still.
is the parking lot based on the size, the square, you know, the floor plan of the building, correct?
Nothing in the floor plan has
That's how,
increased.
That's what I'm trying to get,
Yeah.
am I correct in that that's how it's based?
it's a lot less because that was including upstairs and.
It's
the
based
main
upon
floor.
the exterior of the building, and so that would take then the square footage of the inside. And then it would be based upon the fact that it would be based on a restaurant, so it would be during the, how you had
It's
set
not
up.
an eat-in restaurant.
It's not, it's a grab and a go.
Let's just eliminate that portion for just 1 second. My question is, has it been changed in size from the bed and breakfast to the coffee shop?
Well, for his consideration, he only is wanting to take into account the first floor, so that's not taking into account the second floor on that, so it would be
So it's
less square space than that, yes.
Okay. So then, if it operated before with that many spots at a bigger size, and now they're gonna operate it with the same amount of spots with a smaller size, am I right so far? Then what's the issue?
Wait, and may I add that at the council meeting, when everybody met me with a blank face, I got no emotion out of any one of the council members, the mayor, anybody, and I wanted answers why mine is not allowed, but all these other places are allowed to bend rules. And Wendy Manson said that it was because they were grandfathered in. Well, this should be also because this was a business.
Well, yeah,
That's a new business though.
It's a new.
But-
But all them other businesses that have traded hands and started over, they all had to get a new business permit. So somewhere along the line, they're all getting a permit and not following the rule that a Chandler association has.
Let's not get into that.
Okay.
But I go back to the point I just made.
Yeah.
If they're a less space and they have 6 lots, does that meet the city's requirement to open the coffee shop?
The Institute of Traffic Engineers for this kind of spot would predict that there would probably be about 13 cars per hour that would need to be parked there, and which is what, based upon the requirements, why it comes to about 12 parking spots, which would be required.
Okay.
And that's based upon the code here, and then it was a change of use, which then would constitute it going to this requirement.
And ultimately,
You
what
think
it
there
boils
would be
down to.
13 cars an hour parked at that coffee shop? Holy cow.
Yeah, well, we're losing about $1,000 a day now by not being open.
Yeah.
So,
He's just going by the standard.
Okay, yeah, right,
That's the state.
you're just giving us the facts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I got that, and thank you.
That's the state.
Yeah.
That's what the Institute of
So
Transportation.
is there the parking lot that's next to the tar lot? I'm
Yeah.
assuming that's got class 5.
No, it's
Or-
conduit actually, conduit, and it was done specifically as a good base to pave.
Okay.
Because there were low spots and high spots and stuff, so it's all conduit, which is a good base for pavement.
Okay.
Part of the problem now is you can't get anybody to pave it until spring, next spring at least, if you're lucky, so.
But they can park on the conduit.
That's
right?
right,
Just
absolutely.
strike.
Ultimately, it just
Right.
boils down to the fact that it's not paved.
It won't be even striped, but they can still park.
Right, and you come
I
in one
haven't-
side and go out the other.
I've only been on planning and zoning for a year and a half or whatever, and this is the first time something like this has come up. Have you guys dealt with deferments on things before?
We've issued.
Yes.
So that's, I can't say.
And like Wendy said, I know that,
We've done it before.
city planners in the past, they've done agreements with people, so, and I thought, this is a quick and easy deal, so I just wrote that quick letter and
Yeah.
sent it off to
Yeah, I've got it
the
right.
deep, dark hole of consultants and, yeah,
Right.
thank you.
It actually surfaced, here it is.
Hey, well, man, don't
My question is, how are we gonna hold you to this, Sid, that you have it done by July 1st, 2022?
You know,
He would have to enter into a development agreement if he was to get a deferment. And part of that development agreement, though, he would have to strike at least 6 of the spaces at this moment and provide a plan showing where all the spaces would go in case the city asked for the parking spaces to go in before 2022.
So if it doesn't happen, he's shut down on July 2nd to
If the
2022.
zoning administrator or like Deb would find that the site is actually getting more parking than what he had, they could at any time during the development agreement ask him to put parking there.
I would like
The
to.
date is, what he has put in there is the 2 years, is that's his thing.
That
He
was
wanted
our-
this to go. Yep.
that was just, to give us a little breather, we've been bleeding money for 2.5 years on this.
Well, and if you entered into you wouldn't have an issue entering into the agreement.
No,
So,
it's,
I don't
things gotta be
understand.
done, I don't like it, I'm not crazy about a lot of things, but
I mean-
you gotta get things done.
I don't see a problem with, when do you think you might open up?
I was supposed to open in June.
Oh, so you're ready to open?
I'm ready, turn the key and I'm open, yeah, I'm ready.
And if this was Maple Lake, we'd have been open months ago. It's just, everything is so complicated. I've heard for 25 years, you can't get anything done in this town. And people they try to do something, start something, they get so frustrated, they just throw it all down and leave, go elsewhere and open their stuff.
Well, obviously by the questions we're asking you, I would think you'd gather that we're kind of with you.
Yeah, we're with you.
Don't shoot yourself in the foot. You know what I mean?
I don't know.
No, I'm with it too, but I don't want him to come back and ask for an extension.
Oh,
July 1st, 2022.
that's why they'd have to be the development agreement that says that they would have to have a drop dead date, that they've got to have it done by, or the requirements that you talked about. If they, turns
And it
out,
would have to have a requirement if you enter into a deferment agreement, that you're not going to defer, it has to be at least half of the spots have to be.
right, yeah, exactly, with this new caveats that you added.
I know that he says paved, it doesn't, I believe it's already paved on this side, is it not?
Yeah.
One-sided.
The one side,
If he was to stripe it and to give a plan to the city, I mean, it just needs to be a plan, that needs to be looked at by the city engineer.
Sure.
You can go forward with it, so it doesn't necessarily.
Yeah, so I would say for you guys, that's what you need to do, is get the plan, and then be able to get it okay, and then get it striped, and then get it open, and then, get some business so you can afford to get the thing.
jeez, no kidding.
So.
Pardon me, so let me ask you a question here. If that parking lot was not there, that extra lot was not there, and it was just exactly the way it was before the bed and breakfast with the paved parking lot, are you saying if that other lot was not even there, you would not even allow a little coffee shop to even open in that place?
Well, it's not us.
Is that what you're saying?
No, it's not us, it's, what Daniel's saying is that the state of Minnesota, the state of Minnesota, because you're on Highway 12.
There's rules and regulations.
There's got rules and regulations that you gotta deal with. This is way past the city of Montrose at this point. If he was not on Highway 12, it'd be different. But now you've got the state of Minnesota involved. But even beyond all that, it sounds like
You know.
So the state of Minnesota says what?
State of Minnesota says you have to have a minimum of 12 spots, because they could potentially have 13 cars there every hour.
Because
That is not our regulation,
That's
that
not
is.
what, actually, sorry, your ordinance says that would have to be 12 spots.
Okay, our
Just
ordinance.
to clarify.
So how does that work then if that has to be, but the other places in town don't have to have that?
My-
How does that-
You know, what I would say is, it says someone has to have 12 spots for a coffee shop. Something else wrong with it, says that?
Based upon the square footage and how it's calculated.
And all these ordinances and rules and laws were written by who?
We're-
More city planners, more people who can't understand, you know, what's in
Why don't we
the.
repeal that? I mean, the state law is the state law, but I mean, we're trying to keep business out, right?
Yeah, that's what I always hear.
I would like to see them in here.
Steve?
People that live here trying to start something here, trying to get some.
That's
Yeah,
right.
just word on the
Amen.
road personally, but if the state has an issue with it, that's their problem. That's just,
Just a couple of things. Ed?
Couldn't we set up kind of a progression?
Lloyd, can we let Steve talk?
Let Steve answer.
Your code says you need to have a certain number of spaces based on the square footage and the land use. So depending on the use, if they were opening a retail store, it might be different than 12 or whatever.
the state code or the?
That's right, your local ordinance, and your local ordinance is based on generally accepted estimates of how much parking a particular use is gonna generate. Everything is different. So then your code also then says, you can do a deferment. You can show that a business owner can show that they don't need 12. They can get by with 6. That's kind of then the minimum standard. And the process for doing that is to ask for the permit. It's an administrative permit, which they've filled out. And we just need the documentation to go along with it, the site plan that says here's where your 6 are. And someday maybe there's gonna be 6 more. And to do the development agreement like we talked about. So I think it's been cast as somehow a way to deny the use, and in fact, actually, what we're trying to do is show that the code actually is written to allow
There's
this.
supposed to be paved, is that part of
There's
it?
6 paved, the
There's
other
six
6.
paved.
Right, the other 6 would be.
I know.
Yeah, the applicants have said there are 6 on the lot that are paved. We just need a drawing that shows here's where they are.
Right.
And a pretty simple process. So it may sound complicated or whatever, I hope that it doesn't, but the ordinance is pretty explicit
They've
about
submitted a picture.
what they allow.
No, they don't, they need to submit that.
Right.
So
So,
how long does that take then? I mean, I.
You guys have to do it. You have to come up
Exactly,
with
but,
it.
okay, so we submit it, say we submit it tomorrow.
So, okay, so,
How long does that take? for
Seems
you?
like
Because-
everything's 30 or 40.
Right, I gotta get open here.
I know.
I got the burden of a business with
We-
no business income coming in.
We understand, and we're trying to get answers to it.
I believe that would be at the next meeting.
actually, it would even maybe at the next meeting if they.
Yeah,
The administrative process.
right,
Exactly,
So-
exactly.
If we
As quick
put
as
in-
the city can get on it,
Yes.
then that's what would happen. That's what I.
if we pass a motion that states that it's contingent on that plan, going to the city engineer, get his signature on it, then we should be good to go. Does city council need to approve this, Wendy?
They would not need to, I'll step in for Wendy on that.
Okay.
Again, it's an administrative permit, so if the resolution that you're talking about goes through, then the applicants can deal with staff and get it taken care of.
So as soon as, I mean,
So I would say in a couple of days.
yeah, so if we approve it tonight and you get the plans to the city engineer tomorrow, he can stamp his approval on it, then you should be good to go. So-
It would be, development agreement would be made together.
Right, there would be a development agreement side of it, if the city's done a few of those deferments in the past, there should be a model for that.
Yeah, well, we talked.
And if we don't do it, you can shut us down.
And it's just one issue, so it should be a simple.
It should be very simple. Yeah.
All right.
We're not talking about a development agreement for a large development, it's just
And if I may add, you asked about the requirement, and it was for that be one space per 40 square feet of dining area and one space for each 80 square feet of kitchen area. And then that would be the first floor. And that was how that was calculated as the 12.
There's hardly any dining in there.
Right,
At all.
there's just a
It's
few
get a cup of
tables.
coffee and leave.
Yeah, it's set up for the commuters. that are going through, they're gonna stop in, they're gonna grab their coffee, a bakery item, get on to work. That's what it's set up for. I mean, it's not a big dining, it's not a sit-down
It's not your typical
restaurant.
coffee shop where people sit in there and
No,
do the internet and do whatever.
no, it don't even have Wi-Fi.
Can I say something? How was the parking approved for the taco place and the other places there? There's nothing in the ordinance when that taco place started over down there, when what's his name started. Nothing ever come in front of the council or nothing ever come in front of planning. So
Well, then how would we have an answer to that question? If we've never dealt with it, then how would we know?
Right, that's not,
That's a question that is German.
Okay, I'm gonna shut this down right now. I'm gonna shut comments down, and I'm going to go to the commission for a motion.
I make a motion that Gail and Sid can open that up by putting in a deferment and getting it approved.
I'll second that.
Motion has been made and seconded to allow for deferment with approval from the city engineer for paving the Cool Java Coffee Shop parking lot. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have a question about city planners. Is it stipulated by law that a city the size of Montrose is required to have a planner, city planner, or is that preferential or optional?
I honestly don't know that answer, I'm sorry. I do not know that answer.
Anybody can answer that?
My guess is, because with.
I was guessing.
No, he was mayor of Dassel, so let him answer.
I know,
We did not have a city planner, or were required to have a city planner. We did not.
you say you're not required?
No, otherwise we would have had to have it. We didn't have one. We worked with an engineering firm, and that's how we did our thing. So we did not have a city planner in Dassel, and they do not have one today, that I'm aware of.
Well, the city of Montrose population roughly around 3,000. Is it required by law that you have to have a city planner?
Okay, I'm not gonna address that tonight. I'm gonna ask for city planner updates at this time.
The city planner should know.
There's really no updates right now.
Get the mic closer.
Nobody wants to answer the question?
No, you asked for the city planning updates. You had asked about the Casey's site, and I believe that had been sold from Casey's to a third-party company back a couple months ago.
Yes.
And we were going to try to follow up with them.
Okay.
There had been also two interest in the properties, one over there on the eastern side of town on a commercial lot.
Okay.
That was for a trucking facility. That wouldn't be kind of a suitable interest, but he was redirected toward the western side of town. And then there is also an interest at it's 135 Central, and that would be something that we'll be talking to them tomorrow about a business that he was interested in talking about there. Yeah.
Okay. Commissioners have any questions or anything else to bring before this meeting tonight? Okay. Our next meeting is Wednesday, September 9th at 7 p.m. here at the Community Center. Hearing no further business, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the August 12th meeting.
I'll second it.
Motion has been made and seconded to adjourn this planning and zoning commission meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Meeting adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Will the city planner answer the question, is it required to have by law that city planner?
The only statutory requirements for a city are a clerk and a treasurer.
Yeah. What's the only requirement?
People used to make decisions.
Clerks and a treasurer.
Yeah, it's leaving me.
Cornucopia, carry.
Actually, I talked to Sid, I'm the one who told